Welcome to Leadership Forward, where you'll meet Arizonans with innovative answers to our state's greatest challenges. I'm Dawn Wallace from the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership at the Flinn Foundation. Well, I'm really excited to have my guest today. He is a business owner. He is a philanthropist. He is a community leader, TikTok dancer,
lover,
art aficionado, and he is our good friend and Flinn-Brown Fellow Adam Goodman.
Proud Flinn-Brown Fellow.
President and CEO of Goodman Interior Structures.
Right on the price, right on the corner of 14th Street and Indian School.
Well, back in the day, it just used to be Goodman's Furniture. Why the fancy new name?
It's funny you ask. We're actually going back to just being called Goodmans because the term interior structures was just sort of invented, and it's kind of a ridiculous term. And I kind of shudder when people say to me, hey, I want to come by and look at your interior structures. Like, that's not a thing. Don't say that. That's embarrassing.
Well, I love that on your website, the name of Goodman's originally, when your grandfather formed it, I can't remember, Arizona
Office equipment,
and that your father suggested the change to Goodman's because people like to buy things from people they know.
Yeah,
it's something like that.
Very good. Yeah,
and I think to myself, that is exactly how I consume. I like to know the people whose products and services, and so that personalization I thought was great. And so if you're going back to that now,
I'm going to get you a credit application, and you can come buy something. That's great.
Oh, believe me, I've worked for a lot of organizations that have bought your. And actually, I was going to ask you, like, when you is it an occupational hazard when you walk into a room?
Yes.
For you to sit and go,
yes,
yeah, this is a chair. Oh, I'm going to need to be bleeped at some point. Okay. Like, this is not a comfortable chair.
You've got 90% of my attention, but 10% of my attention is on this chair.
Okay. How is that chair?
It's not great. It's not great.
What's wrong with it?
It's just not.
Does it not have lumbar support?
It's just poorly formed. I'm getting infusion treatments right now. And I went to the infusion center and complained about the infusion, because we sell infusion chairs. And I complained mightily about the infusion chairs. By the way, they were fine. There was nothing wrong. But I'm just annoying. And I said, for my next infusion, can I bring my own infusion chair? And they let me bring my own infusion chair. How great is that?
Who says no to you? Do you take no for an answer? Ever?
I'm not answering that.
Okay. Well, it's a good question, and maybe one day you will answer it. So 70 years Goodman's has been in business.
Yes.
Local business. Started with your grandfather in the 1950s. And in the 1950s, that was sort of a glory days of Phoenix, right? It was right after World War II, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of young families, a lot of immigration. Like, is that the spirit in which Goodman's was actually conceived by your grandfather?
It was less that sort of swashbuckling entrepreneurship and more, we need to make a living somehow. And in Philadelphia, where they were coming from, they had a furniture store, and they lived above the furniture store, and so that's what they knew. And they found a way to get office furniture, surplus office furniture from the military, and so it was really more, how are we going to eat and survive, than the romantic idea of I think the West is going to be growing. I mean, they were here for allergies because they needed to get out of Pennsylvania and get somewhere dry.
There's a self-preservation piece to that, but you run your business now very from an entrepreneurial perspective. Was that sort of birthed as part of this multi-generational business?
That's fair to say. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Like, what did your father sort of add to that? We just need to eat. When he then took over, was it, well, we need to eat, but we need to do this as well?
That's right. That's a good point. Yeah, when he took it over, turned it more into a corporation, less of a mom and pop shop and more of a corporation is what he did, and expanded the geographic footprint and got more sophisticated. He invested in the first AutoCAD machine in Arizona. It was a $100,000 computer that my dad likes to say, it took up an entire room, And he likes to say it could build a bridge. Like, it's really impressive technology, but it wasn't very good with furniture. It was a little bit overkill for us.
Well, so talk to me a little bit about sort of multi-generational family-owned business. So I'm that's a very immigrant mentality, right? I mean, I'm an immigrant, and the notion of building something and passing it on to next generations, like, does that work? Like, is it a thoughtful legacy building? Like, are you building Goodmans for the next generation of Goodmans?
So my kids, when I was my kids' age, and they're 23, 21, and 17, and when I was at the age, the one thing that I knew I did not want to do with my career was exactly the job I have now. I wanted nothing to do with this business. I had worked there every summer break, winter break, spring break, and I had ambitions to be in the newspaper business. I wanted to be a newspaper publisher, and not, for God's sakes, office furniture. And so, no, it doesn't work in that sense. Now, like, every dinner table conversation we had was about the business, for sure, all growing up. So I learned a lot through osmosis about the business, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And at the moment, my kids are at that same spot, which I don't begrudge them that at all. They want to see what else is other opportunities are out there.
But I read that, every summer you were in the warehouse, and I mean, it was a real part of your upbringing. But you also said in an interview that, like, you knew immediately you didn't want to do anything. You don't want to work with your hands, right? Yeah. And so, so there must have been something that drew you to being in business. I mean, you got your degree from UT Austin, which is where my kid sister just got her law degree, the Longhorns, I guess.
Hook 'em horns, yeah.
But, like, there must have been something that attracted you to being a business person.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yes. I mean, and
so
that's
what was it?
growing up around it and having those dinner table conversations and listening to my father talk about the challenges he was having. Yeah, absolutely. That definitely appealed to me.
So you also, it sounds like, have married your sense of purpose to to your sort of life's work. So how does that happen? Is that why are you laughing?
Oh no, I mean, it's a big question. I'm taking in a deep breath, and I'm going to answer your question. When I came into the family business, so I did go to work for Gannett Newspapers, and I spent several years there and was moving up that chain with the idea of being a newspaper publisher. By the time I was 30 was the ambition that they set for me. And that my father at some point came and said, look, if you ever want to know what it's like to be in the family business, now's the time. Otherwise, you're going to rise too high in the corporate ladder and you won't want to take the step back, which is exactly the position my brother was in. He was 7 years older and was too high as an executive at Mattel Toys. And so, okay, Dad, I'll give it a try. I'll come back and spend about 10 years learning the business. And it was interesting and challenging and fun, but not especially fulfilling. And I had a reflection on what was it about newspapers that was so compelling to me. And what I realized is it's the way newspapers can shine a light on an issue in the community, draw everybody's attention to it, and make change and get something to happen. And that was really why I wanted to be part of newspapers. And so the trick for me was to figure out how to take this office furniture company, this third generation office furniture company, and reposition it so it could help me fulfill what my purpose is and what I'm interested in. And that's how we pivoted the whole purpose of the company, which up to that point, I would probably describe as sell more stuff was the purpose of the company, and made it about making an impact on the community and defined it in a whole variety of different ways. And now I am excited to get up and come to work. I'm not particularly passionate about file cabinets. I don't want to pretend that I am. I'm a little agitated about these chairs I'm sitting in right now, but otherwise, that's just an occupational hazard. And we collect people at the company who believe the same thing and who care about the same things, and that's a powerful force.
Well, I do want to talk about the media and your interest and current work in really trying to build more mediums for sharing journalistic
informed citizens,
which I think is obviously a big part of civic leadership and civic engagement. So I want to get to that, but I want to stick with your how you've sort of reimagined your business philosophy. And I want to start with you talking a little bit about your perspective on conscious capitalism. Obviously a book by Whole Foods CEO John Mackey, but you give a TED Talk where you started challenging some college students and kind of giving them a heads up that you're about to use a dirty word. And you build that up and you build that up. And then ultimately you say, capitalism is a dirty word. And then you go on antithetically then saying it is not a dirty word. In fact, the adjectives you used is capitalism has value, it is ethical, it is noble, and it is heroic. And I want to hear a little bit more about that because, as you know, I have been a free market capitalist for a long time, and in our little political world, and certainly with younger generations, this notion of capitalism is like Gordon Gekko, corporate greed, Wall Street. But really, the way that you explained it and the way that Mackey explains it is that it could be used as a force for good. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Thanks for watching. By the way, it was a TEDx talk. I've got a good friend who makes sure I put the X on that every time. He doesn't like me claiming it's a TED talk. Capitalism has been around for a long, long time. This idea that capitalism is all about maximizing shareholder value. That dates to September 13th, 1972. Like, it is a very recent idea. And it was from a magazine article written by Milton Friedman in the New York Times Sunday magazine, where he lays it out here. That's the point of capitalism. And for the next 60 years, that's been the dominant way of thinking about capitalism. And that's where the Gordon Gekko comes out of. And that's where Martin Shkreli and the EpiPen guy and all the bad actors that we've heard about, they're all using that as the excuse of maximizing shareholder value. And whatever I have to do is that's the only purpose of capitalism. Well, that's just simply not true. And capitalism, writ large, over time, is moved people out of poverty and hunger at an alarming rates. I mean, there's no other mechanism invented by humans that moves people, lifts them up like capitalism has done. And to dismiss it the way 49% of young people are doing right now as something that's evil or inherently evil is completely misguided and missing the point. Instead of the idea that the shareholders, maximizing shareholder value is the only purpose of a business, the way I subscribe to is that the managers get to decide what the purpose of the business is. That they get to declare who the stakeholders of the business are.
Well, and you say very emphatically the community is the main stakeholder.
For me.
For you. And your model that you use at Goodmans and have really embraced that you have customers. And you actually say in that TEDx talk, I've been duly corrected, that Friedman actually says that when you use your profits or you manipulate capitalism as a force for good, that you're actually stealing from your shareholders. And he sees that connection between profit making and public good as being actually in competition with each other. How have you taken this conscious capitalism and embedded it in your business? And how do you then interact with your main stakeholder, the community?
a word on stakeholders. I mean, a company can declare whoever they want to declare as their stakeholders. So many companies declare their employees are the primary stakeholder, or their suppliers, perhaps, or the environment, it might be the stakeholder, and you can have more than one stakeholder. So that, just to clarify on all that, how have we embedded it in the company? So I made this declaration. This said our main stakeholder is the community, and we're going to use our surplus assets, resources, and talent, that we have available, and make it available to the community. And I challenged our employees, go find needs in the community that can benefit from our surplus assets, resources, or talent. We don't have unlimited money to throw around. So we got to be really creative. We've got trucks, and we've got warehouses, and we've got furniture, obviously, and we got lots of things that we can use. So go find the needs and let's match them up. And our employees every day are answering that bell and finding ways that we can deploy our surplus assets, resources, and talent for the community.
What's an example of that?
When we deliver furniture to somebody, almost always we come and say, here's your new desk and chair. And that person almost always says, oh, thank you. Hey, could you get this old stuff out of here? Like someday we're going to replace the chairs in this studio. And we're going to take these chairs and they're going to say, can you take these chairs away? And the way the industry works all over the world is you take these chairs and you sell them to someone else for a 100% profit margin. Well, we look at that as a surplus asset. We've got nothing invested in it. We don't know. We did some labor moving it around, but that's not really much. And so we make these chairs available to the community, to nonprofits, for free. So every day, and I really mean every day, we have nonprofits coming into our warehouse and picking out conference rooms and lobbies and private offices and whatever it is they need, and they can haul it away for free, or they can pay us to deliver it to them. We're purposing millions of dollars a year, and it's money that the nonprofits don't have to, they can spend on their purpose without investing it in their facilities. To us, that's changing the community. We're fulfilling our purpose. We got lots of these. Would you like to hear another one?
Sure.
I got another one I got lots of them. In Tucson, one of our people came and said, look, I'm a foster parent, she said. And in Phoenix, there are 3 foster clothing banks. But in Tucson, Southern Arizona has none. And we can be a foster clothing bank, even though that has nothing to do with furniture. But we've got space in our showroom. We've got trucks. We've got people who can fold and sort clothes. We should be the foster clothing bank. And that's, 12 or 13 years ago now. You come into Goodmans in Tucson, there's about a 5,000 square foot boutique that looks like a children's boutique. So when someone hands you a knock at the door in the middle of the night and hands you a 2-year-old, you come into Goodmans the next day and you can get clothes and books and toys and all the stuff a 2-year-old needs and take it away for free. That's making an impact on the community, and it's all surplus assets, resources, and talent to do it.
So in 2020, you wrote an op-ed talking about how you really dug deep into your own business and how you deal with equity issues. And in the context of that article, you said when the private sector pivots to serve the greater good, its reach and power is immense. That's connected with this philosophy of conscious capitalism, because you are using you called them your assets, your surplus assets, to serve a need and a gap in the community. I really like that, and I think I'll probably incorporate that somewhere in Academy. So
the government's not going to fix a problem as big as systemic racism. It ain't going to happen.
Well, I want to pivot to that a little bit.
Right.
So in that article, you really dug deep into whether an organization like yours was doing right in terms of ensuring that your hiring practices, your procurement practices, all of these were done with a mindset around equity and ensuring that folks that you hire have the same opportunities, wage equity, and things like that. You use a term that was very new to me, and you said it in 2020, it's 2024, and it's the first time I heard it, occupational sorting. Can you talk about what that means and how unconscious that might be? So I never really thought about it, but you used an example of women are nurses and men are doctors. How is it in the context of Goodmans?
Yeah, occupational sorting is an insidious form of unconscious bias that many people aren't even aware of. And sometimes societies have their own. So that's the example I gave. Girls are teachers and boys are construction workers. Sometimes industries have their own. In our industry, boys are architects, girls are interior designers. And then sometimes companies have their own. And so at Goodmans, the way that happened is specifically, you are a Hispanic male, then you are in our operations team. You're working in the field, installing and delivering furniture. And we were unconsciously sorting people that direction. And maybe that's an entry point to the company. But then when it comes to higher promotions, if you're a high performer with high potential as a field installer, we would say to you, hey, let's talk to you about an opportunity managing other people in the field. Instead of saying, hey, you might be a really good designer, or you might be a really good salesperson. Those are the higher paying jobs, by the way. But we didn't see it because we've got this occupational sorting blinders on, and we were steering people into this.
Is that because people come in with different levels of experience, education, or is it that you just assume that people want to do different things?
If you're an installer for us with a high performer, high potential, you've been there for 5 years or whatever it is, you know this industry really, really well. And so that there's some technical skills you don't have to be a salesperson or designer, but we can teach you those technical skills. You've done the hard part, but we weren't doing that. We were just following the path. And oh, by the way, occupational sorting is baked into all of us. So when I first went to our installation team and said, okay, good news, everybody, we've discovered this insidious mechanism where we're sorting you into these jobs that are not as high paying as they could be. And we're going to cut out who here, raise your hand if you'd like to move into sales and provide more for your family. And of course, nobody raised their hand because they'd never seen anybody go that route. And so this was, like I said, it's baked into all of us. And so it's you really got to decouple all these things. And what we learned is you have to look at people from a very objective framework based on their inherent behaviors and tendencies and motivators and all these things that a DISC profile, for example, can pull out of somebody. We measure that against the benchmark of our highest performers in sales or design, for example. And now we can say, you've got the raw stuff that would make a really good designer. You're missing some technical skills. Let's spend 2 years putting you through community college, and then you can be.
So it's like personalized learning.
Exactly.
So Goodmans is 180, 200 employees, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do you, can a corporation of 10,000 employees implement this type of thoughtful professional development for their employees? I mean, is it a scalable?
Yeah, I see your question. Yeah, I think it's scalable. I think it's absolutely scalable. In fact, it's probably harder at a small company to have the mechanisms in place to really invest in making these kinds of evaluations and training. Like that's a big burden on a small company. But the bigger you get, I think the more that can be baked into the company.
Well, and Goodmans was also the first B Corp, right? Benefit corporation. I had to look that up, mm-hmm. And it was. It's not like a different tax classification. It's essentially a. Well, tell me what it was set up to do and what it's become now 10 years later, because in Arizona, it was actually authorized in 2013.
Wow. It's 10 years old. Wow. Yeah. 11 years old.
51st legislature, first regular session.
Wow. Nice detail. There was, conscious capitalism and B Corps have an overlapping Venn diagram. I'd say B Corp's a subset of conscious capitalism. And a B Corp, it's now to become a benefit corporation, you have to, first of all, you have to put it in your charter that we exist beyond just serving the shareholders' needs. By the way, Profit is absolutely non-negotiable. We have to make a profit. John Mackey referenced before, he has this great quote that I like, which is, my body needs oxygen to survive. That doesn't mean the purpose of my body is to breathe oxygen. And that's the same way it is about profits. We need profits to survive. Okay, put that aside. It doesn't mean it's the purpose of the company. So a benefit corporation says you need to declare the community, the environment, and your people are your stakeholders. And you have to file it with the state, and then to be a B Corp, you have to get audited that this is you do what you say you do. It's a good housekeeping seal of approval, basically, and it's a very it's expensive process, candidly, and also candidly, it's a complete pain in the ass. Like, I really don't like going through the audit part. It's a lot of paperwork. You're pulling everything from wage data to recycling data to electric bills to all kinds of things. It's a lot. And so we stopped being a B Corp. That's a trademark, basically, somewhere around 2018 or so, and we're just a benefit corporation, which means we're still doing all that. We just don't have to go through the audit. The pain and suffering of and the expense of the audit.
Well, I can ask you a lot more about sort of the business side of who you are, but I want to switch over to like what I know is your passion, and that is journalism.
Needlepoint. Oh, sorry.
Latch hook?
I thought you were going.
Did I hear latch hook? Okay. Don't make me put the TikTok dance up as part of this podcast. Is journalism. And I want to dig into that a little bit. Tell me where you think we are, and tell me where we need to be. What's our grade now? Like on an A to F.
I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. That's the good news. Let's start there. I see a way out of this. But let's get a little dire first. The decline of newspapers, which really most people trace back to Craigslist starting and taking the classified advertising revenue away. But that was just the beginning of the snowball rolling downhill. And then it was exacerbated by the big public corporations coming in, big public corporations whose only stakeholder was their investors, right? We're tying these two conversations together. So all they cared about was maximizing the shareholder value. And as they are rolling up these newspapers across the country and stripping resources out of them, the product that they're delivering gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And they're starved for resources. And our whole democracy was built on the idea of having an informed citizenry. Like, people don't really appreciate that. Like, that's how this thing was designed. It was to have an informed citizenry. And when that breaks down, and it's broken down, you get all kinds of craziness, which is, what you see before you now. Now I want to make a distinction here that's really important to me, with all due respect to the studio that we're in now. I make a big distinction between print journalism and broadcast journalism. And in my mind, and I'm overgeneralizing, and I'm going to insult a bunch of people, but here goes. If you are a serious journalist, you go into print journalism because you want to shine a light on wrongdoing, hold people accountable, tell important stories. If you want to be famous or rich, you go into broadcast. That's a big generalization.
Can I challenge you on that?
Sure.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I don't actually think your premise is incorrect. I do think
it's a little reductive.
I mean, I do think, obviously television is an entertainment medium as a general rule, and news becomes news is something that the consumer is interested in. If there's a medium for that to happen, they'll put it on a television set. But I'm not entirely sure that we don't have print journalists who also write for entertainment.
Yeah.
And so do you think that's the problem, is that there actually used to be a sort of a line, and Walter Cronkite would probably disagree that he's an entertainer. He was an entertainer, but
not familiar with his work.
I don't. There's a sign downtown Phoenix. You might look into it. Yeah. But I mean, and I agree with you, the corporate greed and all that stuff, but have we changed the way, we being the consumers of news, have we said to the people who give us news, just that's boring the way you used to do it in columns and at the fourth grade level. We want to be entertained by you. And because we want to be entertained by you, we're going to want to see your personality in the stuff that you put in and that you write up. And we want to see a little of your opinion in that.
Super fair.
Because we've sort of stopped thinking for ourselves. We want to look to people to give us the answer. Not just to be informed, but the answer. So I'll stop there because I do struggle a little bit with sort of glorifying print journalism when print journalism has started to kind of find its way into that entertainment vector as well.
Super fair. Journalism writ large is responding to the marketplace. Yeah, that like any other marketplace, that they're giving people what they want. Yeah, you're right. I think what you're touching on is the notion of objectivity and the importance of objectivity.
Absolutely.
And that's not an ironclad bedrock rule of journalism over time. Like, it wasn't always that way. Now, that happened after Watergate. That became a thing, and that was sort of right around the same time as the Milton Friedman essay. Really, you think about it. And so, for the 60 years, that seems to be the predominant feeling that we have to have objective journalism, and that's dialing back. And there's some really, I think that's fine. Like, if you can wear your opinions on your sleeve and present your news thusly. There's still a role, however, I believe, for the daily newspaper of a metro city to present the news as objectively as they can. I think that's really still really important.
Well, I mean, you said it. I mean, we have a representative democracy, right? And it's incumbent upon the citizens who elect individuals to make decisions for them to be as educated as the people making decisions. And that is a tenet of ours at Flinn. Obviously we do leadership, but we presume that the ecosystem around civic leadership and civic life is as healthy as the leaders that we are developing. And that's why we do adult civic education, because when there's something on the ballot, where are you going to get your information? You're going to get it from whatever objective media outlet you think you, and as you also know, Adam, we go towards people who say the things we want them to say. And so, that I think is inherent in this conversation as well, is that we won't read stuff that we disagree with. And that way, and because of that, we don't get the full picture. So objectivity, as you said, has really gone out the door, not just because of the actual journalist sort of system, the journalism, but also the people who are looking for information, and the dividing line between you.
I don't think it's gone out the door. I wouldn't go that. It's still out there, but it's harder and harder to find.
I can't believe that you're the optimist in this conversation, because usually I'm the one who's Pollyannaing and you're poo-pooing me. So this is great for me. I want to talk about, you are the list of things that you do is too long. I mean, you just got appointed as the chair of the Banner Health Foundation. You're the chair of GPL's public policy, and you are on a bunch of boards, and you're civically engaged in many, many ways. But I want to talk specifically about your role at GPL. First, I want to ask you, is GPL a business organization in your mind?
GPL is a CEO organization, is how I think of it, not a business organization.
Okay, and so how does that differ?
CEO, the job description of a CEO is unique in the sense that it requires you to think long-term, not quarter to quarter, not even year to year sometimes, but like you got to think in decades to be a successful CEO. You got to really have the vision to think long term. And so GPL assembles all those people who have that similar skill set. And when we turn our attention to look at Arizona and the issues facing Arizona, we're not thinking about how do I get the most from my personal gain tomorrow. We're thinking about what's best for the state in the long run. So
then you're CEOs of nonprofits and corporations and
it's corporations and some foundations. There's no just straight nonprofits. All the nonprofits are foundations.
So how do you then take all of these different opinions, CEOs they exist in different sectors, and they're either engaged civically or they're not, or however it works. How do you get everyone on the same page about public policy? Because it's hard enough to do that sort of in, at the kitchen table or at Thanksgiving dinner. But how do CEOs of all of these different businesses, large, small, medium, and then the foundations who have different missions, they're not subject to profit, that profit focus. How do they all agree on what we want for education and what we want for our business climate and what we want for immigration and what we want for our health and well-being of our citizens? Is there agreement? Is there consensus?
Yeah, there is. So we're divided into committees. So all of those domains you just discussed have their own committees, and people self-select who want to participate in those discussions. And those committees do deep dives into their topics. I mean, deep dives and bringing in experts and talk things through and review different proposals and ideas. And then a consensus forms around, here's the things we want to advocate for. And then that comes to the Public Policy Committee, where we decide what levers we're going to use in our arsenal to be able to go advocate, whether it's using professional lobbyists, using our members testifying, relationships with legislators, whatever.
Do you think the business community as a whole is effective in influencing public policy? And how? If so, how? And if not, why not?
We believe we are effective in influencing public policy, and it is by making friends of elected officials and having access to them and being able to make our case to them. Oftentimes, it is helping stop bad ideas. We've spent a lot of energy just stopping bad ideas and things that never made the newspaper because they got killed. And we take a lot of pride in that. And your former boss deserves an awful lot of credit for helping with that too. But also, we've had success at moving issues forward and getting the people we've got relationships with to make an impact.
It's interesting you mention elected officials. Like, obviously, building relationships, working with them when they're in office is important for public policy. Since you referenced my former life, I know that very well. But is there also a place for the business community to be more involved in getting those individuals to seek elected office that are aligned, in those policy areas that are important to business, to CEOs, and to a healthy Arizona, whether it be education, workforce, or healthcare, whatever? Does the business organization, business groups, and business people need to be more cognizant of how we get people into positions of power and influence?
About 5 or 6 cycles ago, we were very active in recruiting candidates all over the state, recruiting and training and funding candidates all over the state. You look at a map and we could tell you that here's the people we recruited, meeting with them, getting them, literally teaching them everything about how a campaign works and showing them how to write thank you notes and all those kinds of things. And we did it a couple cycles and then got our ass kicked one cycle. Can I say that?
Yeah. I used a bad word at the beginning. They'll bleep you.
And that we got real reflective on how we spending our time and money, and we're spreading our money across so far, and we weren't very successful with the candidates we recruited. So we pulled back from the recruitment and decided we're going to let the marketplace do its own recruiting. But what we're going to do and get really involved early, we have a consultant that we paid simply just for this purpose to understand who the candidates are in a primary and vet out how they stand on what we call pro-business issues, which are essentially, funding for education, for economic development, for all the sort of mainstream ideas that are basically not the extremes.
Well, so you're Flinn-Brown Fellow.
I am. Proudly.
2023, yes. You're inducted into the network. about a month or so ago. And you came about it kind of a different way. Tell me what, this Leadership Forward for a Better Arizona, as I mentioned to you before we started, is really a way for us to showcase and highlight the incredible work that our fellows are doing in every nook and cranny of the state and every sector and every policy area. So what do you think you bring to the network, and what do you think the network's going to give to you?
First of all, if I can just make a quick commercial for the Flinn-Brown.
Go. 1, 2, 3, go.
It was really one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. I loved my time as a Flinn-Brown Fellow, and I'm sure I was a little bit older than typical and came out of private sector, which is not quite typical. But wow, I can't recommend it enough, and wish I could do it all over again. It was...
Did you learn anything? Because, you're the dude that runs the public policy committee. I've always kind of wondered if you were sitting in there thinking to yourself, yeah, I already know this. What was the part that really enhanced the experience for you? Was it the folks sitting around the tables with you, or
the folks sitting around my fellow fellows were extraordinary. And yeah, there's no question that's the best part of it, is these people that you've built these relationships with. And I cannot wait to watch their careers. They're going to be so successful and make such an impact on the state. And I feel so lucky that I knew them when, and I'm going to maintain those relationships for as long as I'm, around. So I bring obviously the business community perspective on things. That was, there's just not a lot of that, frankly.
Yeah.
It's a lot of public sector education, that kind of thing. And the other thing is, I learned a ton, to answer your question, actually. I learned a ton. So yes, the people were the reason I thought it was so great, but those deep dives on each topic were just, it was overwhelming, but so interesting. And I just ate it up with a spoon.
I think that over the last 4 years since I've been there, it's, the program started. Jack Jewett, who was a former legislator, regent, amazing person. He's since retired, but his vision was that this would be a pipeline of really amazing folks who would go then on to serve in elected office. That hasn't really come to fruition for a lot of reasons, not because we don't provide that pipeline, but because, the political system has driven, the sort of center right, center left sort of out of the equation a little bit. And that's what fellows tend to be. They tend to be consensus builders. They tend to be very open about moving their issues over the political spectrum. The one thing that we've really have been focusing on the last few years is trying to move away from that model purely and finding individuals who are business people and leading them into civic life so that they can be influencers in public policy. So you have an Adam Goodman who, cares about, he's a business person, but he cares about education because he has this overwhelming need to have a workforce. Not only that, but you're a father and, you care about the community and all of that. But business people have a unique perspective, and they should sit at the table when we're talking about education, healthcare, public safety. And so for me, having more business people be involved in this program, and then maybe finding a spark around serving in public service, whether it's elected position or state agency heads or something like that. So having said all that, are you ever going to run for office?
I did not know that's where the question was going.
I threw you off. Look at me being a good interviewer.
I was just sitting here enjoying this conversation. You're talking about me in third person, then all of a sudden what?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Really?
Okay, I will. Okay. If you're going to bully me into it.
Wow. Wow, I just asked you. That was not bullying. Bullying, I can be persuasive. Well, and that's fine. Not everyone has to run for office. But I do think that we are trying to convince this new generation of leaders that there's value in public service. We had a whole convention about it. I'm worried that that's going the way of people's appreciation for capitalism and for a good media ecosystem, whether that's, information giving or it's opinion or whatever it is. How do you think we can inspire young people to find their way into these elected positions so that maybe we could see a shift in the type of rhetoric and the type of public policy development, and maybe just a sort of change in tone in how we deal with each other as humans? And that's my last question to you. So make your answer a good one.
So again, your former boss, Governor Ducey, the very first thing he did when he got...
I've had many bosses, Adam Goodman, so I do like my former boss, but go ahead.
The first thing he does when he gets into office, as I recall, was around civics, civic education.
The civics test.
Yeah. And that it's an emphasis on civics in schools does seem to be the best way to accomplish this. I mean, I can't think of a better foundation than that.
Well, engaging youth. And yeah, my kid just took that test and got a 91%. She was very excited about it. She was glad to know that her mother had a hand in that. No, I mean, I think it's the foundation for civic engagement is this sense of what is your civic responsibility? And I do think we teach civics, we teach government. I'm not sure we teach citizenship. And I think that's where that was a first step towards other things happening. But this was your question. Like, are we at a point where we are seeing young people want to revolutionize this system of politics that we have into something different?
Well, sure. I mean, I don't know about just young people. I mean, the open primaries initiative that's going to be coming on the next ballot, that might just change the entire game and make the whole process a lot more palatable. And people like me might say, okay, now I can see myself going through that, or figuring out how to get money not quite as, paramount in the whole process. And I mean, really candidly, that's why my answer is no. Like, I don't want to be calling people and asking for money round the clock. That doesn't sound like much fun at all.
No, I can't tell you. I don't think I've ever worked for any elected official who said, I would really like to do that all day long. In fact, it's the thing that they choose not to do. It's the procrastination.
It's just a matter of how much you hate doing it. I happen to hate it so much that
I mean, the asking is bad enough, but I mean, it when you ask for money, it certainly has strings that come with it. And that's what sort of tallies the...
Tell me more.
No, I don't know. What do I know? I'm not political. I have taken up too much of your time.
No.
It's been very fun.
I'm staying right here.
Oh, really? You want to talk some more? You asked me questions. What can I...
If it wasn't for my back.
Well, I'm going to have to pay for some PT now, I think. But it's been delightful. It was wonderful getting to know you. And like I said, we had a little bit of history before you came into Flinn-Brown. And I've enjoyed getting to know you more.
I'm a huge fan of you and the center and everything.
Well, I can't impress upon the audience enough that Adam Goodman is an amazing philanthropist. I equate you to the Helios Education Foundation. If there's any event, any conference, anything out there, there's always their logo and then there's Goodman's. And so, but I think that's important. That's the whole conscious capitalism. It's your notion that, and your philosophy that community is a stakeholder. And I think that's really great. And I think then when they see that, folks will say, okay, well, this is a business I care about and I want to be attached to. And I appreciate the fact that you make very comfortable furniture. How's that for an advertisement for you?
Right on the price, right on the corner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adam Goodman, for joining us today at Leadership Forward for Better Arizona. wraps up this episode of Leadership Forward. You can find out more about the work of the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership at our website, azcivicleadership.org.